Hello everybody, and welcome to a slightly different format of video. Today we're going to be talking about the recent news regarding Doctor Who Series 13 and the future of the show. With me today, to my left, is Dom, aka Who Chaser, aka the Purple Doctor, basically Doctor Who himself.
Hello.
And to the left of Dom is Council of Geeks, connoisseur of all geeky things. We are the council. She just runs the meetings, except this time I'm running this meeting.
I've been usurped.
Upstaged and shoved in the jar. So, any, initial, well, for starters, did any of us watch the panel?
I watched the first 3 minutes and then jumped to the end for the trailer. This is not a judgment on Doctor Who specifically. I always find these panels really, really boring.
Dom, what about you? Did you watch any of the panel?
Yeah. Thing is, I was on a coach really with my other half Cat when we saw the notification that the panel was going on, and so we were kind of a captive audience. We made it to the first 10 minutes, and then we realised that it was actually skippable, so we could skip through it and see out various bits. So we just went straight to the special guest, and then the phone battery started to want to die. So we're just like, okay, maybe later.
So basically, I didn't watch the panel.
Oh boy, what a well-educated group we are to talk about
this is why I need you both here. I couldn't do this video without both of you. And
it was easier following the highlights on Twitter.
I much prefer doing this than doing the research myself. So, basically, I'd seen, I think Thary's put up a post on Twitter about the trailer being out, and I just watched it from there, and I saw the trailer. I asked Dom, who is the special guest, and I can't remember his name already. I feel really bad about that because I'm sure he's a great
JJ
actor.
Anderson.
JJ Anderson. Okay.
Jacob
Anderson. Name doesn't ring a bell for me. What's he been in?
Broadchurch and Game of Thrones.
Yeah, best known for Game of Thrones. He played Grey Worm for several seasons.
I see. I only got up to season 4 of Game of Thrones. I'm really not informed.
Nah, that's the thing. I'm not really into Game of Thrones, but logically, this guy seems like he is a coup. I just haven't heard of him personally.
And
I mean, he's a perfectly solid actor. I do think he's an odd pick to have bigged up in advance as much as they did. And I also sort of think in the back of my head, special, what does that even mean? Because more often than not, when a quote unquote big name appears on Doctor Who, they don't do anything of note. I mean, how many minutes was Stephen Fry on screen?
Yeah, and Lenny Henry wasn't the most notable. He turned in a good performance, but his character was definitely upstaged by Sacha Dhawan's master. And then there's also the Maisie Williams stories in the Capaldi run, which, I've heard mixed things about. I've only ever seen her in Face the Raven and Hellbent. I missed out on the other 2 episodes that she was in. But,
yeah, they did make a good use of her screen time-wise.
Yeah, they didn't squander her in that way. You can argue about how well the stories worked, but even more recently, Mark Addy was in Battle of Ranskorav Kolos, and nobody remembers that. So, bigging up the guest stars in general on Doctor Who just strikes me as an odd thing to do. And again, and nothing against Jacob Anderson. Once I realized who he was, because I didn't know him by name, I'm like, oh, okay. But that was about the most reaction it got out of me.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think a lot of people in the fan base definitely got a bit carried away because when they announced it was a very special guest, people were automatically assuming it was a returning person, a returning character. So they were going through I was guilty of this myself. I was thinking Joe Martin, or could it even be Sacha Dhawan.
I was Joe Martin was one of the first people I thought of when they were saying about a special guest. I think in the context of Doctor Who, the thing with Doctor Who's fan base and the kind of people they're trying to market to, oftentimes Doctor Who are kind of it's kind of a one-track mind, you know. If they announce a special guest, you're expecting it to be someone from Doctor Who's history in a way, I guess, and not necessarily an outsider. Which is, I remember at the end of The Woman Who Fell to Earth, they had the preview of Series 11 going forward, and they had this massive laundry list of celebrity guest stars. And the thing is, it didn't excite me very much, and I don't want this to be a complaining session by any stretch, but I personally think Doctor Who, in terms of marketing, now I'm not an executive or anything, I don't know anything about marketing, but like, personally, I would lean more into the aliens in like the marketing, because like when I was a kid, that was what got me into Doctor Who. Like,
yeah,
show some
the
more
whole lead up and the whole idea of promoting a special guest in advance, it shows one of two things, and I don't know which is better, because neither is good. It either indicates that the people currently handling the marketing for Doctor Who don't understand this fan base at all, and didn't occur to them that the speculation about who the special guest was going to be was going to run so rampant, and that the actual person they were going to put forward was going to be an anticlimax and a disappointment. Or alternately, they very cynically understood fully well how this audience was going to react and did it as an extra hook to try and guarantee they would watch. I don't know which is better. They're either manipulative or stupid.
So was Jacob Anderson on the panel at all?
No, he
was
sent in a
guest star
message.
In a trailer.
No. He sent in a video message, because he couldn't be there.
Right.
Because the four of them, like Chris, Jodie, Mandip, and John, were all in a COVID bubble. So Jacob wasn't in that bubble at the time. So
I see. Right. So then there's the name of this character, and Dom, you sent me quite a funny. I
can't take the credit. I have to give the credit to Tarys, who posted that.
Oh, it was Larry's. He gets about these days, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, the name of this character, Vinder. When you look up the name Vinder on Google, one of the first things that comes up is the Urban Dictionary, and it's a slang term for an adult that likes little boys or is sexually attracted to plants. And I'm just like, please put a little more thought into naming these characters. Do a Google search of these names before you name them.
I'm sorry, I'm getting stuck up on the fact that it could mean either one of those things, because one of those gets filed under harmless but quirky, and the other one is like, holy crap, no. So like, even setting aside the fact the name of the character this, I'm already confused as to how the word can have that wide a spectrum in terms of what it's referring to.
Quite bizarre, really, isn't it?
Perhaps he's dating a plant, and it's just the okay version.
Well, as long as the plant's not too young and consents, then you know.
You heard it here first, folks. Don't fuck little baby plants. But as for the trailer itself, and I get that it's like a tease and everything, but again, I do say I really think in the immediate marketing they should lean more either into the time travel aspect and the weird and the wonderful, or the creatures, and like because again that's what got me into Doctor Who as a kid, was I wanted to see these aliens and these prosthetics and stuff like that. That was the thing that excited me. If you showed me the Doctor before I'd watched an episode, none of that would mean anything to me. And I guess one kind of exception would be the Christopher Eccleston teaser trailer, that first teaser trailer of when they brought it back in 2005, and he's all like, do you want to come with me and stuff, and you see a Dalek, and it's all very and intimidating in a way. Like, I don't know, I feel like this new trailer is serviceable, but it definitely doesn't pack a punch for newcomers to the show, I don't personally think. It's more just a Doctor Who's coming back, if you're interested. Here's the Doctor, here's companions, here's a little bit of a landscape going on, and that's kind of it. I feel like they need to present more of what the show's about in this immediate teaser, because I'm just trying to think of it from the perspective of someone who's never watched Doctor Who before. If you place me in front of that, I'd just be like, none of this means anything to me. Like,
Well, I mean, part of what I'd say to that is nothing about the marketing right now gives me the feeling that they're currently aiming for people not already watching Doctor Who. Like that was a big push definitely for Series 11. I would say a bit for well, here's what I would say. Series 11 was designed for brand new people. Series 12 by bringing back a whole lot of aliens and stuff that weren't in Series 11 seemed to be trying to appeal to people who maybe bounced off Series 11 saying, "Hey, here's the stuff you were missing." I don't think at this point, I was going to say suckering, and that's really cynical way to say it, but like attracting a new audience, I don't think is the goal. And if the storyline of this thing is what I expect it's going to be, that's probably a better idea because I unless it does something completely different from what I'm expecting, I don't think this is going to be a good jumping on point anyways.
Yeah, so then that kind of brings up another thing I kind of wanted to discuss, is that this season is going to have a very sort of different format to the seasons we've had in the past, in that we're not going to have standalone episodes. It's all going to be arc-based. What are our thoughts on that?
That's going to be quite interesting to see how that particularly is handled, because I know that Chibnall's strengths do lie in long-form storytelling, like Church. I mean, the first two series at least, because that was something of a gigantic success. If it can bring that sort of dynamic to Doctor Who, then it could be his best work, maybe, perhaps. I don't know what to expect, really, because I don't want to draw any comparisons like people have been doing to, say, Trial of a Time Lord or Key to Time, etc., because it's not going to be like that, realistically. So I'm not really sure, but I am curious as to how it's going to be, because I know every episode apparently has a cliffhanger, so that's certainly something to keep the audience hooked in, I guess.
I mean, you say that, but I hate the cliffhangers. But that again, I'm old and grumpy. So like, I'm really of multiple minds on this whole idea, because I understand that like this would in theory play to some more of Chibnall's strengths. And also, if it's written as one continuous story, maybe we'll have better character consistency and not have the wonky characterization moments that happened a little less in Series 12, but a fair bit in Series 11, where it felt like the characters were just different people, episode to episode, half the time. So, maybe planning it as one big thing and not having a whole bunch of individual writers working on these things in isolation will help the consistency and fix some other issues. But at the same time, like, my faith in Chibnall himself is not high. I want it to be good. I will always want Doctor Who to be good, and I will always hope it will be good. But I haven't been super impressed with Chibnall's work. The episodes during his era that I have really liked, he did not write. And there's also just the general fact that format is always going to make me nervous, because one of the benefits of an episodic thing is if one of your stories stinks, it doesn't sink the whole thing. It's like, well, we'll come back next time and have a different story. But if you're only telling one story and you don't nail it, then the entire thing is a loss. So like we had Loki wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, and I really liked Loki the whole way through. But all the way up to that last episode, I was still nervous because I knew that if the last episode dropped the ball and stunk, then there would be no return enjoyment in the previous 5 episodes because they'd be building to a clunk ending, which is basically culturally what happened to Game of Thrones. No one even talks about the good seasons anymore because it built up to an absolute dud of a finale. So I will always be nervous about something being set up as a continuous story because until I see the very end, I don't know if it's going to work.
Now, I kind of agree with both of you in that I can see that there's a bigger risk factor. Because if they bugger up the story as a whole, like it's, it won't have those individual episodes within that you can kind of take away from. But all the same, I do think there's more potential for it to work as well. Like I've always kind of felt that Doctor Who, it sometimes works in the 45-minute format, and sometimes it doesn't for me. Sometimes I feel like I want to spend more time in this story. Like because the magnitude of like Doctor Who as a concept, all of time and space and everything like that, you can go to all kinds of places and have stories on massive scales and stuff like that, and I would like to see that play out over the course of a selection of episodes. But all the same, like, yeah, if it doesn't work or it's not a good story in general, like, it's going to drag down the entire series. So it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'd just feel more confident if, like, we had I don't want to slag off Chris Chibnall, because I think the guy gets slagged off way too much on social media. Like, I didn't like Series 11, but I got what it was going for. I liked Series 12 as a whole, but personally felt it would have been stronger as like a 6-episode run and just make it that kind of arc. So that's why I'm kind of looking forward to this different format. Like, I'm kind of embracing it with open arms, but at the same time apprehensive that, yeah, like, if they don't, bring it all home, then it's just not gonna work.
I mean, I would call it a high risk, high reward situation. If it works, and I say that from a creative standpoint, because I don't care about the ratings. I never do, about anything that I watch. So, like, from a strictly creative perspective, it's a high risk, high reward gamble where if it works, it could be amazing and it could be like a real shot in the arm for this era, which has been, I mean, for me, a mixed bag, and even if you like it, you can't argue that it hasn't had a very mixed reception with a lot of the fandom, but it is a format with a lot of hazards and a lot more stuff that can theoretically go wrong. But we'll see if it's a gamble that pays off or not.
So yeah, like, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, like, the last time, I think, to be fair, the right way to go about this was what they did with Series 12, where, like, it has an overarching story, and there is effectively a 6-episode story arc in there, but you've still got some standalone episodes sprinkled within it as well. Like, part of me was like, I think it would work better as, like, a 6-episode season. But it depends on how strong those additional episodes are. And I gotta admit, I haven't seen Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. I've heard good things. I haven't seen that one. So it might, really change my opinion, make me say, no, it's better as a full episode, a full series run. But yeah, it's like...
Well, I mean, part of my other hesitance about this is I have found more often than not the series arc stories, even prior to Chibnall, of almost every Doctor Who to be one of the weakest aspects of the current modern era of the show. I actually, more often than not, have way more issues with them than enjoyment out of them. So the idea of stripping out everything except the series arc, again, just based off history and my feelings about the series arcs up to this point, I'm going to be like,
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, I don't... See, when I think of, like, a series arc, I don't really think of, like, the teaser mystery box things of, like, set up early on, who's this? And then later on we'll answer that. I don't really think of that as an arc so much as, like, a stinger, but, like, if they do, like, one continuous story, like, over the course of a few episodes, that's, like, a different thing for me. But, like, I think they do need to think outside the box and not just go for the, here's a mysterious thing, what could it be? Like, format. Like, I think, they need to embrace more than just mystery box things for these, consecutive episode arcs.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing is that, and we don't know for certain what the story's going to be yet, but logically, coming off of Series 12, if you're going to devote it to one continuous story, I don't know what else it could possibly be other than dealing with the Timeless Child revelations and the fallout from that. And, like, I've said since it aired, like, I do want to still see Chibnall do whatever story he thinks he can weave out of this thing that he's done, but I still hate the thing. So I'm going to be coming at it from a position of, the seed that whatever story you're growing out of this, I hate that seed. I'm not going to say it's impossible for me to like whatever you develop out of it, but you're starting at a handicap.
Well, it's even if I'm not on board with something that Doctor Who wants to do, I would rather see it play out and completed than have them just drop it, like in favor of something else.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think in a comment somebody asked, how would you feel if they just dropped the timeless child thing altogether? I'm like, the only way I'd be okay with that is if Chibnall had been fired and someone else came in. If a new showrunner didn't want to pick it up, that's fair enough. But like, he's gone this far. Let him tell whatever story he's going to tell with it. Do I think it's going to be good? But I'd still rather they play out the consequences and do whatever the heck the point of this was, because otherwise it just becomes another weird blip along with the Doctor being half human in the Eighth Doctor movie or frickin' Lungbarrow.
Yeah,
Lungbarrow.
I think as well as that though, like Doctor Who naturally being a show that's run for as long as it does, there are some repetitive things in there, or some things that I personally feel are repetitive, and I get that some fans like it. If I'm not mistaken, Vera, you really like the Base Under Siege stories, right?
Actually, as a format, I do quite enjoy them. I know other people find them repetitive because it's something that especially classic era did a lot, but I do like it as a format.
See, like I see the Timeless Child as kind of a means of kind of breaking it up a little bit, like even though, like, personally I think they didn't execute it very well. I think there's good stuff in the Timeless Child reveal, but I don't think it was executed very well. There's a world of storytelling potential now. They're effectively able to start from chapter 1 all over again, and I think if they were to just dismiss that and just say we're going back to the status quo, that would just be so lame, in my opinion. Like, I want to see it through. I want to see what new stories this is going to bring. And I was kind of saying, immediately after I saw The Timeless Children, I was saying, if Doctor Who as a show changes its behavior from now on, becomes a bit more unpredictable, then it's going to work. But they can't just go back to business as usual. I need to see it have an effect. It needs to change the show. If it doesn't, it's just, look at this crazy thing we did,
Yeah, that's the thing. I just don't want the consequences being ignored. And like, as I've said before on multiple occasions, I don't want like the invention of a whole new Doctor being put to pasture basically like after 10 minutes of screen time. So it's a difficult minefield, and I'm not really sure there's a winning position from there. But it really depends on how they move on from it.
Some people are just going to be alienated. Like, if you're not on board with it from a fundamental level, it's completely fair. Like, but if...
so I'm going to kind of agree with you, but then also, given the fact that I don't ever want this show to end, I'm also looking past the immediate. Because in terms of the time during which Jodie is the Doctor and or while Chibnall is running the show, for that period of time, I agree with you. This should have long and far-reaching effects, because otherwise, what was the point of doing it? But at some point, eventually, under a different Doctor, a different showrunner, I kind of would like to go back to business as usual, because business as usual is what I love about this show.
I think the best way they could deal with it is that it introduces a new dynamic, but that new dynamic isn't necessarily every episode. There's still going to be some like episodes and stories that are just Doctor Who as you know and love it, but it now has the potential to do different things that people might warm up to. But personally, if you were to ask me how I would kind of address the Timeless Child thing, I'd basically say there's been some fuckery in the time-space continuum. Someone's gone back and changed it. So it wasn't always like this, but like someone has changed the timeline. And then you either stick with it or you don't. You either repair the timeline or you have the Doctor accept the new timeline. That way, it doesn't have to be as contradictory as it might have seemed, Like, because my main issue with the Timeless Child twist is, like, there's a lot that needs explaining now. If you're going to make a twist like this, I would kind of expect covering a lot more bases than they did. I'm left with a lot of questions, and it's not just kind of like, the future of this twist so much as it is, okay, but what about the logistics of this, you know?
I mean, reactions to that thing varied, but I'm in the somewhat frustrating position of hating that twist, but for different reasons than almost everybody else I know who hates that twist. So the biggest complaints about that twist tend to come down to either considering it disrespectful to the lore, or as you said, right now there's a lot of logistical holes in it. Honest answer, I don't care about either of those things. I really don't. What I care about and why I hate it is intrinsic to the idea, regardless of how well anything is done with it going forward, which is that the idea that the Doctor was the being from which the Time Lords were able to get their ability to regenerate at all makes the Doctor the most important entity in Time Lord society, if not the universe. And this was one of my big frustrations with parts of Moffat's era, especially with Smith. I don't like the Doctor being that important. I want to just follow someone who is wandering around helping. I don't want a savior, a chosen one, a most important being in the universe story. I don't want that, and I never want that for the Doctor. And this twist inherently makes her that. Whether they take the story in a way that fleshes her out as being that or not, that's now what she is by the nature of that twist, no matter what narrative comes out of it. And I hate that. I hate the Doctor becoming a freaking miracle child, Christ figure thing. I hate that.
So the one thing that I guess kind of cushions it for me, I guess, a little, is because, like, I agree that the Doctor shouldn't be this special, the chosen one sort of character. Like, I hated when they did that with, like, the Amazing Spider-Man films, and I don't like...
God.
Yeah, that was... Everything else in that movie would have been so much more stomachable had it not been for that. But, like, with Doctor Who, one thing I can kind of say to cushion that would be that where the Doctor actually comes from, that she's not special there. But then it's just kind of extra steps for what we already had, basically. So it's one of those things where the Doctor... You'd basically say the Doctor was integral to the development and survival of Gallifrey. But all the same, the Doctor has been integral to the survival and development of countless other worlds that would be gone were it not for the Doctor's intervention. I guess the way to cushion it would be just to say Gallifrey is any other planet, effectively. Downplay the importance of Gallifrey, and also make it so that the Doctor, as far as her own world goes, is not important, and that there's people far more important than the Doctor in that realm. The thing is, I think this twist was done to bring about more, mystery as far as the Doctor's origins go. So in order to address that, you'd need to kind of show a little bit of where the Doctor comes from. And I think if they're going to do this, again, basically, if they were to show where the Doctor's from now, it would basically just be everything we had before, but with extra steps,
Yeah, that's the thing is...
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, there's a limit to really how much they can really do. Personally, I like the show moving forward. I don't like it being so introspective, but then again, haven't seen the how this whole thing is going to play out, so I'm still trying to reserve judgment in that regard. I do agree, though, that I like the idea of the Doctor just being this random bastard on Gallifrey, is just a bit of a problem child for the Time Lords, who just keeps on going and doing things that they don't really like, don't try not to care about. But the whole oh wait, the Doctor's actually the reason for Gallifrey society. It's a bit strange. It's a bit difficult, to be honest.
And I mean, we shouldn't sink too much time into the timeless child thing. But the only reason I brought it up is, as I said, if they're gonna do one continuous story, I don't see how the story they do could be anything other than the timeless child. And while while I do think that Chibnall should do whatever his plan is for that story, so that the point of all this is out there, I am ultimately, it's something that I don't want to eat up the entire series, and I don't see how it can't. And it would almost be weirder if that's not the story they're telling for the run of the series, because then it's like, well, then what the hell?
Yeah, no, I fully understand. Like, it's in a polarizing position. That's like the number one thing that's going on here, is that Doctor Who is in an incredibly polarizing position, and there's no way they can really get out of this one without it being polarizing. But I guess, for me, that makes it very interesting. Like, I think Series 12 was the most intrigued and talked about Doctor Who had been, for me anyway, in a very long time. And I put part of that down to just, I'm a grown-up now. When I was big into Doctor Who, I was a kid. I was just very intrigued by where they were going with the Jo Martin Doctor and everything like that. And I'm hoping that we'll either see more of Jo Martin, or that they'll hold off on Jo Martin and then introduce her as the next main Doctor.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping.
I've got a video coming out in I think it's this Saturday, talking about my feelings on that. But yeah, short version is I agree. I do feel actually very strongly that she should be the 14th Doctor. And depending on, what happens with the story in Series 13, that may or may not be narratively, logistically feasible. We don't know yet, but that at this point, that is very much what I would like to see happen.
Something I would be game for is if they maybe went down a non-linear storytelling route. So it's like, maybe you don't even show a regeneration. You'd basically have Jodie Whittaker in her final season, whether it's this season or whether it's a later season, whatever. Just, you could have her just at a point where she's going to regenerate, and basically have it signaled off screen. And then the next season, you don't show who the new Doctor is. You don't show who the new Doctor is at the end of that story. The next season is a fully flashback season, completely dedicated to Jo Martin. So you'd have like a prequel season as a means of having the new Doctor.
That is a unique way of going about it. I mean, it would definitely fit in that if there's a narrative dissonance between making it the 14th Doctor. And I don't think that would cause too much confusion, really, if you just address it, don't draw too much attention to it, really.
Yeah, like you could even do something crazy, like at the end of Jo Martin's run, show her regenerate into Hartnell or something. I don't know, but like just enough for it to make sense that yes, this is a prequel. Because I'd be game for a prequel season. Like Doctor Who, it's all about this big ball of wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff, yet it always moves in linear order. How about, doing some non-linear storytelling and doing some prequel seasons?
My one concern, I like the general idea. My one concern about that is if we do find out definitively and lock in the idea that Jo Martin is a pre-Hartnell generation, which right now is the implication, but is not 100% confirmed. My major issue with that is that everything up to this point has always indicated that even if if they had lives prior to Hartnell, like Hartnell was the one who decided to leave Gallifrey. So for me, something would feel very strange about having an incarnation of the Doctor being the Doctor. I mean, it's one of the things people pointed out that right now is the big hole in the idea that it's pre-Hartnell, because her TARDIS is a police box. And if it's pre-Hartnell, it shouldn't be. So if you're going to tell a pre-Hartnell Doctor Who story, in my mind, well, it cannot fit the standard format and tone and mood of Doctor Who, because we watched the Doctor become the traveling adventurer. And if it becomes a matter of, well, they were that even before, they just forgot, I'm like, it's the kind of narrative twisting back on itself to to a degree that starts to irk me, because I can deal with timey-wiminess, but at a certain point, it starts negating its own history.
Well, here's a way I think it could work. Is that she'd still call herself the Doctor, but that she would be a bit more unpredictable. And it takes place at a time that's obviously like prior to the Doctor actually leaving Gallifrey for the reasons that we understand and know. So it obviously like sets up a very unique circumstance for Doctor Who stories, which I think would be refreshing. But for the TARDIS thing, they could solve it by that she at some point converged timelines with one of the Doctors that we know and stole their TARDIS for whatever reason. You don't even have to see that Doctor, but she could just be on the run somewhere and be like, this will have to do, takes that TARDIS, and then returns it afterwards. I think that's a way they could explain the police box thing.
Mm.
And then if she's getting her memories wiped anyway, like, it makes sense for Hartnell to be like, oh, I mean, that destroyed the thing.
That's another part of my concern with any version of Joe Martin that involves and a memory wipe. I'm like, that it inherently takes a lot of the stakes out of whatever happens.
Yeah, memory wipes are pretty lame. I mean, you know it's not going to be important to the sorry, you know that the story is not necessarily going to be integral to the Doctor Who that we kind of know, but I do think like having the occasional season maybe dedicated to like pre-Hartnell adventures to kind of recontextualize this universe and run with this timeless child thing, you could in that regard have like, you know, here's like a main series season where it's like a continuation of the Doctor Who that we typically know, and then you could have the occasional prequel season where they do some more out of the box things. And but then again, it is ultimately going to end with a memory wipe and none of it being important to what comes after. But I guess you could make it important to itself as its own story, I guess.
You could. I don't know how you do that without just by its nature splitting the fan base over whether the stuff in the past or the stuff going forward is better and which one they'd rather be dealing with. And also just as intriguing an idea as some of this is, I don't see it happening for no other reason than there was no logistical reason why they couldn't have done this after confirming Paul McGann as canon, and they could have given him, heck, you wouldn't even have to have given him a series, just give him a holiday special, but they never did. And if they didn't do it for McGann, I'd be surprised if they start doing something like that with Joe Martin or any other sort of weird past incarnations of the Doctor.
Well, that's kind of what it boils down to for me. I think the BBC needs to open up the floodgates for a less linear Doctor Who. Do more with, you know, the past of the show. Do more to kind of address burning questions. Like, it's basically like the whole Star Wars business model, where it's like they had the sequel series, and then they had like things like Rogue One and stuff like that. I think Doctor Who would benefit greatly, and we're kind of doing that with Big Finish already. But I would like to see the BBC take that on, because I think that is a very intriguing way to go about this show that for a lot of people is just getting a little stale as far as a lot of public perception is concerned.
I think my concern about that is, and like this was something that came up very early in the conversation, but kind of fell back to the wayside. If you are trying to bring in new people, I think that's going to drive them away very quickly, because they're going to look at, wait, how many different series of am I going to have to be following? How many spinoffs? Wait, what's happening now? Because like, I think the reason it works with something like Big Finish is ancillary. And the reason Star Wars got away with it is because Star Wars is so big, and especially setting Rogue One in the timeline of the original trilogy, which definitely everybody knows, they got away with it. But I dread, because I look at what has happened to the comic book industry, not the Marvel movies yet, but the actual comic book industry. It became so insular because it was trying to stay fresh and appealing to the audience it already had. And it eventually just stopped getting new audience, and it's just been stagnant for decades.
So I guess this would kind of be my business model. It's kind of my business pitch. Is you basically have Doctor Who kind of run as it does now, And then you could kind of have something that's about these pre-Doctor years, but treat it as a standalone story. So, like, you don't have to watch the existing Doctor Who to understand it, and you don't have to watch this to understand the existing Doctor Who, but it just enriches the narrative a little bit more. Give it a different title. Call it, like, Testament Zero, a Doctor Who story, or something like that. And it's just, like, the pre-Doctor that we know and love now. And it's just its own standalone story. You make it work within its own contexts, and then you'd inevitably get people saying, "Oh, I like this version of the show better," but I don't think that matters too much. Like there's already that, but people are saying it about older versions of the show that exists. At least it would be kind of current, Like that's just my line of thinking, but it's just a concept.
If you wanted to test bubble that concept, what you could do is you could start having the holiday specials be a place to try out a new Doctor, just see them on an adventure. Because if we're being completely honest, the holiday specials have become a strange beast, in that everyone expects them to happen, but they also kind of can't matter. They're not really allowed to, which is actually part of the reason I think one of the smarter things Chibnall has done is been to relegate the Daleks to the holiday special. I think that's a good place to be like, hey, let's have Daleks and have fun, and like that's just what we're here for. And there isn't the same expectation or weight to a Dalek appearance that you would have in the main series, where people started to get annoyed where they became fodder, like under Moffat. So if you wanted to roll that out more slowly rather than like suddenly just doing it, something like that, I would not be against doing more experimental things with the holiday special.
So yeah, I kind of half agree on the note of the Daleks, because I do like them as like a little Christmas thing, and they just go all out with the kind of B-movie horror sci-fi stuff. But all the same, when I saw Revolution of the Daleks, I was just thinking, I want to see more of the Daleks. Like, I want to see them factor into the main stories as well, because I think... I don't like to crap on any writer or anything here, but I don't think Moffat and the Daleks gelled. I don't think that concept was one that worked with Stephen Moffat, so I didn't really like the Dalek stories in the Moffat era. I think Chris Chibnall, though, has a really fun grasp on what the Daleks are. Like, I would say, if there's one thing Chibnall does better than Stephen Moffat, it's Daleks. If there's one thing Stephen Moffat didn't do well, it's Daleks, as far as I'm concerned. And I just kind of I like the model for what these characters are. I like the way he treats them, so I would like to see them in a bigger story. But as well as that, I just kind of think, like, one singular episode is not enough for the Daleks at this point. I want to see more of them. I want to see them go big. But, like, no, all the same, I do think, like, what he does with relegating them to Christmas specials is good, because I get it. I get what he's doing. I just want to see more of them. But, like, at the same time, yeah, I think using holiday specials to do something more experimental is also a really good idea. Like, and that could be kind of the backdoor pilot to potential, additional variants of Doctor Who.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's much else. It's funny, we haven't really talked about too much about the teaser, other than the fact that it was there, and like there wasn't a lot to pull from. It was interesting that you pointed out they kind of put more of the emphasis on the characters, than anything that they were facing or where they ended up, which again kind of strikes me as a little bit of an odd tactic, given that we're only introducing one new character really of note, and also given the divisive nature of the last few seasons. Not that I'm saying they should pretend like these aren't the characters we've got, but like at this point, other than what is his name, Dan, other than Dan, we already know these two. So, and especially in a teaser format where you're just going to get quick flashes, it would have been more interesting to get quick flashes of something that's like, that just gives you an instant read. Like, here's a quick flash of this alien. Here's a quick flash of, this death trap, And I mean, I say that as someone who, my general opinion on teasers, I'm more likely to be meh than not on a teaser in general, because whether or not a teaser works for me almost entirely depends on how excited am I for the thing even before the teaser comes out. Because if I'm already pumped, the teaser will usually hit me well. If I'm more skeptical or if I have no idea what the thing is at all, I'm going to look at the teaser and go, okay.
That's kind of the reaction I had to this teaser. Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, it's just in regards to the teaser, I feel like that the aliens, they're just keeping them close to their chest. They probably had some redesigns as well, and they probably just don't really want to show them off just yet, which I guess theoretically is all fine.
We do know that we are getting some aliens.
Yeah,
like
we know.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But people have already taken filming pictures and all that. But as usual, the production team doesn't want to acknowledge that. But I just like seeing aliens in teasers and all that. I just like a little bit more, in that way of
12.
substance.
Season 12 had aliens in the trailer. You had the Cyberman. You had the spider crab thing from Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror.
Yeah, he did, and that's sort of the fact that I feel that they just need to, as I know this particular era is very spoiler phobic. I think they might just benefit from just letting loose a little bit. Not too much, obviously, but just something. I mean, there are two extremes. Like, we've got the extreme of the Chibnall era, basically being like, you're not really getting much. Next time trailer is basically a load of the guest stars you're having next season. And there is the other extreme of the Moffat era, in which they would basically like almost self-sabotage by revealing how the cliffhanger resolutions in the actual next time trailer.
Or like
the
literally
Master's
John
coming
Sim.
back. Yeah, John Sim.
Yeah, I would rather.
Oh God, that one.
I would rather go down the Chibnall route than the Moffat route in that case. Like, yeah, don't show me anything than show me that John Sim is back as the Master.
You know what ticked me off so much about that, and I'd forgotten about this until I did my rewatch. Not only did they drop that in like teasers ahead of the season starting, at the end of the first episode of series 10, the pilot, they did this season on Doctor Who, and they showed him there too. So even if you were the kind of person, which I try to be if I can, who avoids too much of the marketing because you're afraid of spoilers, you still got it spoiled just by watching the damn show.
Literally in it.
Yeah. Oh. That's very infamous. I'd say that's probably the most infamous spoilery moments of the entire new series run at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, rightfully so.
Yeah,
that was horrendous marketing. I'd definitely rather go down the don't show anything at all route than that. Like, but yeah, no, as you say, Dom, I think they could afford to just give us a little suckling of what the enemy, or what one enemy they're going to be. Because we know they're going to be facing a variety of different enemies this season, which, again, if it's all a continuous story, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the journey we got going on here. But, like, what are things that you two hope to see, like, villains-wise or something like that? Like, what's your hopes?
Well, I definitely still want some more of Sacha Dhawan's Master, because I've enjoyed him a lot. Other than that, I don't really know. I try actually in general not to build up too much in my mind, and this, not even just with Doctor Who, but like, ooh, I hope they do X. I try not to do that, and it's not my natural inclination to do that because, you know, that can lead to that disappointment of, oh, I liked my idea better. So, I mean, my main thing would be if we don't see Sacha Dhawan's Master again, that's going to feel like a massive waste. I expect we will, again, because I'm assuming that we have to be dealing with the Timeless Child story, and there'd be no reason not to bring him back in if you're doing that. But other than that, I'm more kind of a let's see what it is, and I'll let you know what I think kind of person.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same, really. I mean, I very much want to see Sacha Dhawan's Master again, because it was very much the standout character of Series 12 for me. In terms of other villains and aliens, I would say just I like to see new original ones, but at the same time, if it comes to revisiting the Rogues Gallery, then If it's since it's a single story of sorts, then it has to be something that revolves around a master plan of something. So it's going to have to be a big returnee. I mean, I don't know. They could easily do another Dalek, but I think that's relegated to New Year's days now. Maybe the Cybermen again, but then again, at this point, maybe they need a bit of a rest. Yeah, so it's kind of difficult. I mean, aside from the returning villains that we already know, well, I say no, but those we're seeing in filming pictures that I don't wish to spoil. Yeah, it's difficult, really. It's difficult. Yeah.
I think it's inherently in the realm of possibility that it could be that throughout the series we're going to see some classic enemies, but the one behind everything is a new enemy. Kind of like what they did with A Good Man Goes to War.
So, like, it's interesting because I hadn't really thought about this until, Dom said it, an original villain, because I think I'm just kind of assuming going in that they're not going to do that. And my brain did two things simultaneously. The cynical part of my brain went, oh, an original villain. You mean like Sim Shaw?
Yes.
No,
I'm right there with you.
The less cynical part of my brain went, well, a big part of the problem with a lot of the new villains that have come about, not just in Chibnall's era, like in all of modern era Doctor Who, is they have a tendency to really only be one-time use. And then when they try and bring them back for more, it doesn't work. Weeping Angels being a really solid example of that. But if you're doing an 8-episode continuous story, that's a good venue to premiere and really dig into a new threat who isn't going to be someone who just shows up and you're like, I don't know who you are. You could, if they choose to, really develop a threat over the course of a continuous story.
Yeah, no, like as long as they got a good villain, then I'm pleased. For me, it was just like going from series 11 to series 12, though I thought series 12 made such a case for like, okay, rogues gallery it, just have the returning villains, treat them as a rogues gallery, because I didn't find any of the enemies in series 11 in any way inspiring to me. None of them captured my imagination. I don't know what they were like for kids. I kind of like the frog just because I like frogs, but like generally I was just but again, it's not a shit on series 11 fest. We don't do that here. Okay, so after a brief technical hitch, we are back. Yeah, sorry. First episode, growing pains, but here we are. And we're just ready to wrap up, I guess. But yeah, so overall, concluding thoughts. One of you two start, please.
I am going to hope for the best. I will always hope for the best, but I'm also one of those people who can't stop their brain from going, oh, here's the ways it might go wrong. So don't take any of the cynical statements that I made, and I know I made a lot of them, as an indicator that I've turned on the show or I think it's definitely going to be crap. Like, I can't stop myself being nervous, but I am hopeful, and I am still going to be looking forward to new episodes of the show, as I always will. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm just gonna really say that I look forward to seeing it for itself, and just keep an eye on all the new promotional material and all the new trailers that will eventually come out, and hopefully we'll see something that is pretty decent on our screens quite soon. Take nothing for granted, of course, but hope for the best. That's what we can really do with Who in general, is just hope for the best.
I'll be honest, I don't really care about Doctor Who, if I'm being completely honest.
Good lord.
Yeah, no, my whole philosophy is hope for the best and expect nothing. It hasn't let me down in the past. It's been what's enabled me to enjoy Doctor Who a bit more recently, post the Russell T Davies era, which is that's the era of the show that I like the most. But like, obviously,
oh, you're not biased because your monster showed up in that era. No,
it's got nothing to do with that, my friend. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with, God, what a great finale season 4, 1, 2. had.
I noticed a conspicuous absence, but we'll move on.
There was just a moment of thinking, like, 3 has its moments, and so do the specials, but they didn't quite land that one, sadly, unfortunately. But yeah, no, not biased at all. Yeah, closing statements done. Do either of you want to plug?
Do you, Vera?
You want to go first? Because I have a lot.
Okay, right. So, of course, there is my YouTube channel, Who Chaser, in which I will be doing cosplay stuff and fan audios. You can check out my series, Doctor Who Remnants, of which Vera has been a part of, and Will is going to be doing an episode 4 in the very, very, very near future. And of course, there is the DW 2012 fan film that I'm also in. That will be airing later this year, starring myself as the Purple Doctor, Megan Shirley as the appropriately named Megan Williams. And there is also my Instagram, which is Dominus of Time, and my Twitter, which is at DominicJGM. There we go.
You just want to plug Big Finish as well?
I try to be humble. Of course, follow the official Big Finish.
He works for Big Finish.
I'm kind of like, yeah, I do work for Big Finish. Yes, I do a bit of admin stuff, and I'm a assistant producer.
He basically writes it all.
No, stop it.
He's taking over for Nick Briggs.
No, someone hears this, I'm dead.
He's managing Big Finish while I run the show.
No.
So yeah, let's move along over to what do you got going on?
Let's see how quickly I can go through all this. So most of my stuff you will find under Council of Geeks. That's where you'll find my primary YouTube channel, which has my most polished stuff, as well as on Twitter and Twitch under that name. Also, for slightly less polished and more off-the-cuff review material, you can go to Break Room of Geeks on YouTube. There's the Council of Geeks podcast, which currently is home to What the Frell, where Jesse Gender and I go through every episode of the TV show Farscape. We are on the latter half of season 3 right now. And also, if you have more interest in my experiences as a gender fluid person, you can look up Vera Wild spelled WYLDE, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And finally, I have a fantasy novel which came out earlier this year, published under Nathaniel Wayne as the author. It's called Dreams of Fire. It is a fantasy electropunk story, and you can check that out. It's available on Amazon and also purchasable and acquirable by your local bookstore or library.
That was such a clean plug, wasn't it, Dom? Like that was
that was
natural radio stuff right there.
That was very, very good.
Yeah, that was.
I do too much, and I have too many things to plug, and I've been doing this too long.
Okay, so as I guess I'll get in on the plugs now. Just subscribe, okay, dickhead? Okay, thank you.
Incredible, such contempt.
So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys, and thank you both for joining me.
Absolutely.
I never know how to end these. Just bye, okay? Goodbye.